I give myself to you. Amen. Amen. You may have your seats on this afternoon. How we doing, Sunrise? We good? Y'all sound good. You sound good. Let's see what we have for real. Sunrise. Oh. That was a senior citizen get up. That was a hold on, give me a minute. Sunrise. Sunrise. When we up. A little bit better. Woo! Amen. So happy to be with you guys on this particular afternoon. We're in our final week of being financially set. How many of you guys feel like you're getting something from these things that we have going on every single month? Okay, who's putting it into practice, though? That's what I want to know. Who's actually applying some of this stuff to their life? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and finish off this last week of being financially set. I'm a person that really likes a good story. And so I wanted to go and pull out a good story for you guys and unpack that whole thing about being financially set. See what Jesus had to say about it. So we're going to read quite a bit today. We're going to read Matthew chapter 25. We're going to go verse 14 all the way to verse 30. That's quite a bit of reading and whatnot. But, I don't know how many of y'all be reading anyway. So we're going to get some reading in today so that you guys can get this story fully in there. Hi, Joy. Woo! So we can get this whole thing. But I want you guys, I'm going to read it for you. It's in the Amplified, but I want you to hear it as a story. I want you to be able to see it as a story rather than just as a scripture. Hear the story. Get involved in the story. So y'all want to hear a story? Okay, here you go. So Matthew chapter 25, we're going to start at verse 14. This is Jesus speaking. He's talking to the disciples about this story about the parable of talents. It says, "For it is like a man who was about to take a journey, and he called his servants all together and entrusted them with his possessions. To one, he gave 5 talents. To another, he gave 2. And to another, he gave 1, each according to his own ability. And then he went on his journey. Now, the one who had received 5 talents went at once and traded them, and he made a profit and gained 5 more. He gained 5 more talents for that." Next one. "Likewise, the one who had 2 talents, he made a profit and gained 2 more. But the one who received 1 went and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants finally returned and settled the accounts with them. And the one who had received 5 talents came and brought him 5 more, saying, 'Master, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have made a profit and gained 5 more talents.'" Next one. "His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy over a little, and I will put you in charge of many things. Share in the joy of your master.' Also, the one who had 2 talents came forward, saying, 'Master, you entrusted me with 2 talents to me. See, I have made a profit and gained 2 more talents.'" Next one. "And his master said the same thing to him. He said, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy over a little. I will put you in charge of many things. Share in the joy of your master.' Now the one who had received 1 talent came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew you to be a harsh and demanding man, reaping the harvest where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed.'" Next one. "So I was afraid to lose the talent, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is your own.' But the master answered him, 'You wicked, lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I reap the harvest where I did not sow, and that I gather where I did not scatter seed. Then you ought to have put my money with the bankers, and at my return, I would have received my money back with interest.'" Keep going. So take the talent away from him. Give it to the one who has 10 talents now. For to everyone who has and values his blessings and gifts from God and has used them wisely, more will be given. And he will richly supply so that he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, because he has ignored or disregarded the blessings and gifts from God, even what he does have will be taken away. And throw him out. Throw it out, the worthless servant, into the outer darkness, in that place of grief and torment. There will be weeping over sorrow and pain, and grinding of teeth over distress and anger. Like I said, I like a good story. So we're going to talk today about you've got talent. God has given you talent. You've got talent is what we're going to talk about today. And in this story, a lot of times when you watch a movie or you're watching something, you're hearing a story, even if the story is real about somebody real or it's fictional, oftentimes you know that they're not necessarily talking about you. You're not the person in the story. You can pull all kinds of good stuff out of the story, but it's not necessarily you're talking about. Sunrise. This is the story where Jesus is talking directly about you. Don't think this is just some fairy. He's talking about us. He's talking about you. He's talking about me. We are the people in the what you call it. So this master, the servants, and their talents. This is a story that is layered with all types of lessons and meanings that can be used to guide to help us to get to financially set. So I need you to sit yourself in this story because Jesus was actually talking to you. You know he made a whole story about you, did you? He created a whole little story just about you, and he put you in the story. And so when I was studying this, I came across a devotional by Susan Nahara, and in her devotional, she pulled out all these layered lessons and meanings, and that's what we're going to talk about being financially set in this whole thing about you having some talent. So the first thing I want you guys to understand is that God gave you talent. God gave you talent. That's what he did. God gave you talent. Yes, even you, those of you who feel like you don't have really much to give or don't feel like you got all that much talent in you, God gave you talent. In the story, a talent is a weight. It's a measurement of money. And so I went back and I researched and tried to figure out what a one talent was actually equal to. One talent was equal to 20 years of wages. 20 years of wages is what one talent was worth. And so I said, okay, how much is that in real terms? So in real terms of money, 1 year, 20 years worth of wages comes out for those of us in America is $1.2 million. This master was giving these people 5 talents and 2 talents and a whole talent. He was giving them $1.2 million per talent. And so to say that the master was exercising some trust in these particular servants would be kind of an understatement. Will we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. But know this, our master, God himself, is doing the same thing with all of us right this very second. God gave you talent. Now, no, God did not necessarily give you $1.2 million. If he did, you never told me about it. And if it is, lunch is on you. And we need you to start kind of upping up what you've been giving in the house of Sunrise if you were given $1.2 million. But he has given you time. God has given you health. He's given you gifts. He's given you experiences. He's given you skills, specialties, personalities. He's given you abilities. And honestly, if we really don't have any idea how much value those particular things are. And so when I say we can't put a value on it, I mean it in the sense like this. To someone who does not have their mother, how much money would they be willing to pay to sit in your seat for 1 week? Those of you that have a mother and be able to spend 1 week with their mother, how much is that worth? To someone who has bad joints and joint pain, how much would they pay to be able to run and to be able to jump and to be able to bend without worrying about any pain or how they're going to get back? Some people, when they go to the floor, they're going to be there a while. They're not getting up anytime soon. They've made a reservation on the floor, and that's where they're going to be. How much would they pay to be able to pop back up? to people that are getting married, a fiance who is planning a wedding, and that is not their strong suit. They don't like wedding planning. They don't like planning events. They don't like parties. They're not social. How much would they pay to have your skills and your gifts to put big events together and have a joy about it, calling people, decorating and putting all this stuff together and watching an event go? How much is that worth as far as money is concerned? To a guy like myself, or other guys that are a little bit on the shorter side, how much would I pay to be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4"? I would pay quite a bit. 20 years wages might not be that bad if you could get me up to be about 6'3" or so. To an orphan, how much would they pay to have had one Christmas with a loving family, all around the tree? All the fixings, all the dinners, all the games, all the arguments, all the fussing, all the surprises that comes with it, all the anticipation, the going to sleep, waking up, being surprised. How much would an orphan have paid to have had just one of those experiences? God is giving you talent. He's giving some stuff over to you. You have talent, and most of it, if viewed correctly, is actually kind of priceless. And so here we are, just like the servants in the story. We've been given by our master some talent, which brings me to the first lesson that we're going to pull out of the story. God has entrusted you with talent. He's entrusted you with talent. The God is the author of every source and every skill and every ability. Everything that we have and that we know to be in our lives has been given over to us by God. And so like the servants in the story, this investment wasn't even our idea. How you are, how you look, what family you have. It's not like you and God sat down in the heavens and decided, I'm going to pick Nikki as my mom, and I'm going to pick this person as my dad, and we're going to have this skin color, and I want my hair to look like this, and I want to be this tall. We did not get the opportunity to pick out all of these things. God did this on his own. It was not our idea. He didn't come with it. We didn't earn our talents. It wasn't like you showed initiative in your mother's womb and he was like, yeah, I'm going to give him a little bit more talent. I like how he's moving in the womb, so I'm going to give him a little bit more of that. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you showed all this specialness when you were a baby and he's like, oh, okay, he's smart. I'm going to make him good at calculus. No. You had nothing as far as earning the talents that God has given over to you. It wasn't because of anything that you actually, God just decided to invest in you. He decided to trust you with his talents. And he gave them to you. He entrusted you with a life. A lot of times we look at that as small, but I want you to think about how large and unique and intentional of an investment it is that God invested you with a life. So at the point of conception, there's over 100 million sperm cells at the point of conception. That means that you had a 1 in 100 million chance of being born. 1 in 100 million chance of being born. Let me give you some more perspective what that means. That's the equivalent of taking everybody alive in California, everybody alive in Texas, everybody alive in New York, everybody that's alive in Georgia, putting them all in one space, and God said, I choose you. You're the one that I chose. You being that one person. God has customly designed your talents, your gifts, your family, your personality, your looks, your thinking, your experiences, your job, your earnings. Everything that you have has been carefully selected for you, and he could have given that to over 100 million other people, but he chose to give them to you. He trusted you above 100 million other candidates. That's what he did. You have talent, and he's entrusting them to you. Are you living up to that trust by responsibly stewarding what God has given you as your talents? Because don't forget, you've got talent. You have talent. And so as the story continues, the master says he gave the servants the talents each according to his ability, right? So now this is where immaturity and shallowness starts to rise up in us, because one was given 5, one was given 2, one was given 1. Now that y'all know how much money that is, one was given 5 sets of 1.2 million. So we're talking about 6 million and some change. Somebody else was given 2.4 million, and then somebody else was given 1.2 million, right? This is where some shallowness can come in. Why did the one guy get 5? Was he, or a girl, he don't say. Why did the one servant We're inclusive here. It could be a girl. It just said servant. It didn't say girl or boy. So don't think girls can't hustle now. Hold on. That 5 person might have been a lady. So it says, why did the 5 get more? Was the 5 better? What was that a 5? Was the 5 better servant? Was he better? Was he a favorite? Was he more deserving? This is what we start to do sometimes when we assess our talents and what God has given us in comparison to other people. God, why did you make me short? God, why did you give me wealthier parents? God, why did I have to grow up with just my mama? Why did I have to grow up with just my dad? Well, other people had mama and daddy in a loving situation, and they loved each other, and they kissed on each other, and sat down and had nice family dinners every single night. And I had to sit, you know what I'm saying, by myself doing TV dinners because my mom had to work or my dad had to work. God, why don't you allow me to lose weight like other people? Why is my fat stubborn? How come it don't just leave just because I asked it to leave? Just like it, why don't I just wake up in the morning and drop 4 or 5 pounds? I don't understand. God, why can't I sing? I would love to sing. Why doesn't my voice sound like that? How come? Why didn't you give me better or more talents, Lord? Why? Right? But like the master in the story, God knows his servants. And so he knows what we can handle. He knows what we cannot handle. The master knew that certain amounts of money would possibly be a little bit overwhelming for these individual servants. It might be too much for them. Likewise, for us, some of the talents that we wish we had might be more than we can handle. Some of you could not have been a child star and have to be on film sets all the time and everybody knowing your name and people expecting you to smile and be happy all the time, and you happen to appear at all these different places and not being around kids but adults all the time, and people telling you where you come and where you go and what you do and all this other stuff. But you just see the fact that they got all this money and they have all this notoriety, and you're like, God, how come that couldn't have been me? Because it would have been too much for you. It would have overwhelmed you. It would have been way too much for you to be able to handle. Are you unsatisfied with the talents that God has given you because you're comparing them with other people's talents? Is this causing you to be mad? Is it causing you to be unfocused? What are you looking at when you assess your talents? Because notice, none of the servants did any comparing. The 5 got his, the 5 got theirs, the 2 got theirs, and the 1 got theirs. And they didn't even bother to talk to each other about what they had, right? They didn't bother to do any comparing. Instead, they understood that they had been entrusted with something valuable and that they had been empowered by their master to do something with it. Which brings me to my second point. God has empowered you with talent. He's entrusted you with talent, and he's empowered you with talent. He's entrusted you that the talent that the talent that you have right now is the best for you in this season. That includes your finances. Where you are currently making, getting, and achieving is the best that you are supposed to have in this particular season if you are being obedient. That's the caveat. If you ain't been obedient, then you might have messed up. You might have had something better. But this is what he's saying is best for you in this season. But he also has empowered you to use what he's giving you, right? He's empowered you to grow them. He's empowered you to perfect them. The question is, are you doing any of that? Are you growing anything? Are you perfecting anything? Are you actually utilizing anything? Understand that God is a gentleman, right? He's a gentleman. He isn't going to constantly pester you and nag you and ask you, are you using the talent that he gave you? God isn't going to come over and say, hey, that idea I gave you, are you working on it? Have you done anything with it? That bonus that you got, did you do anything with the extra money that I gave over to you? That great smile that I blessed you with, are you utilizing that smile even at all? Oh, you're pretty smart. That's great. Are you just using that to up your gaming IQ, or you're actually using what I actually gave you? God is not going to come in and nag you and say, the talents that I gave you, what are you doing with them? Or what are you doing with them? He's not going to ask you this over and over. Have you put that money to good use? He's not going to sit here and pester you and say, have you saved anything? Are you building anything? Did you start anything? Have you worked on the plan that I gave you? He's not going to do this 24/7. He's a gentleman. So, are you actually doing anything with it, or are you just waiting for another talent giveaway? Are you just sitting around waiting for the next time that God just pours out another blessings of talent, another 1.2 million worth of talent I'm just going to bestow onto you. Is that what you're sitting around waiting for? Instead of using what God has actually given you to utilize, right? Are you the third servant who is so crippled by fear that he won't use the talent that God has actually given, empowered him to use? Because understand, they were empowered to use it. The way that you know that this to be true is because he said he gave it to them according to their ability, meaning they had an ability to do something with what he gave them. They had an ability to do this, right? So God's word should be a source of your boldness, and the Holy Spirit should be a source of your power. He gives us everything that we need for a life and for all the resources that we need to live an abundant life. These resources are not always equal in quantity, but they are always equal in necessity. I'm going to say that again. These things that God has given you are not always equal in quantity to everybody else that you see. You may not have what everybody else has. You may not have the same start, the same parents, come from the same place, have the same skill, have the same physical ability, look the same, walk the same, talk the same, act the same. You may not have the same amount of qualities as somebody else, but understand that God has given you everything that you need. Why are you complaining about what other people got when they need more help than you? You don't need what they got. That's why you don't have it. Because God is giving you everything. It's equal. They may have more, but in all actuality, it's still equal. Because God is giving you everything that you need for your necessity. The Holy Spirit is a power that is at work in every single believer. He carries you to new heights. He strengthens you so that you can endure and grow and not be tired. He lifts you up when you're tired and overwhelmed. He comes alongside you when you feel alone and out of place. He empowers you to do something with your money, with your talent that is going to be everlasting. Will you, or are you just going to sit around and compare and complain about what you don't have? Because don't be fooled. You got talent. There's no reason for you to be complaining because you got some talent. An unsaid thing in this whole story that I thought was kind of interesting was that the master never gave any instruction on what they were supposed to do with the talent. He didn't give it to them and say, do this with the money. He just gave it to a servant, right? And so, like, if I don't know about y'all, if somebody gave me $1.2 million and just left with no context, right? So if my parent, if my boss, if a pastor just gave me $1.2 million with no context and just left, I kind of understand where the third servant was coming from. Like, I'm a little nervous about having all this money. And so I'm going to make sure that I hide it or I'm going to put it away. Maybe that third servant was tempted. He knew he might spend the money and waste it. Maybe he just wasn't wise enough to do anything and thought he would get swindled out of the money. Maybe he was scared of getting robbed. But one thing was for certain, he was definitely scared to lose it. Yeah. He was absolutely scared to lose it. But again, like I said, they all had the ability to do something with the money. He chose not to. Yeah. Right? So what happened in this whole particular thing was that where he saw fear, the other two saw opportunity. Right? Faith, what we talked about. Where one person sees fear, somebody else sees an opportunity. Tasia, where you may see fear, somebody else sitting in your same seat with your talents, your situation, your surroundings, your experiences, your upbringing will see nothing but a wealth of opportunity. Trade positions with somebody in a third world country and see how much they would praise your particular position. Right? They may praise your particular position. They see opportunity. Where you see fear about going back to school, where you see fear about learning about stocks and bonds and real estate, feeling like that's above your understanding and that's too much. Where you see fear about starting the business that God told you to start. Where you see fear about doing and sticking to a budget. Where you see fear about doing and sticking to a budget. Where you see fear about doing and sticking to a budget. That gives some people fear. Budget is a cuss word for some folks. Where you see fear about tithing, where you see fear about using your gifts and your talents that God has given you for his glory, other people see nothing but opportunity. And more than that, what the other two understood was that the master had an expectation for what he had given them. My third point, God has an expectation of you and your talent. God has an expectation of you and your talent. Don't mistake it. He's entrusted you, he's empowered you, and there is an expectation that he has of you. They understood the assignment. Those first two understood the assignment. They knew what was supposed to go on here. They had a desire to be an asset to the master. They wanted to make the most of their opportunity. Servant number one could have easily been entitled, been boastful about getting the most money out of all this stuff, right? He could have easily taken a small amount out of that $6 million that he just got, invested in, brought back a little small return, and been happy with that he did something with it. That would have been easier. It would have been less work on him. It would have been less risky. But he understood the assignment that was on him and the expectations that had been placed upon him because of his ability, and he worked his talent to bring back all that he could for his master. Yeah. Some of us have all the talent in the world. We can do anything. We can do everything. There's really not that much that we can't stop, that stops us and that makes us stumble. There's really not that much that we find all that hard and that difficult. If you just tell us how to do it and show us an example, we can make it happen. We can get it done. Some of us have all the talent in the world, and we put very little of that talent to work for God. Very little. And then we'll turn around and complain. When God asks you to do a little bit more, I done gave you a plethora of talent that you are using for your own devices all day long, 24/7. And then when I ask you to do something for me and for the kingdom, or work a little bit harder, or to delay some pleasures to get some long-lasting gains, it's an issue. I like servant number two because servant number two is kind of the one I identify with, because he could have moped. He could have fallen into the comparison trap, like, well, why they got this and I don't have that. Right? That's a big amount of money difference from 6 million to 2.4. Yeah. That's a huge margin, right? So what did they do to where I didn't get that much? If you're giving out that much money, if you giving away, if you giving it away, why you ain't give me what they got? You know what I'm saying? It's the typical middle child syndrome. I feel servant number two. I feel them. You know what I'm saying? Because the oldest got all these experience and got a different mama and daddy and all this, you know what I'm saying? Stuff that I didn't get, and the baby just gets away with murder. And somebody, I'm just in the middle. You know what I'm saying? He could have been the typical middle child and moped and fallen into the comparison. He could have complained about what he didn't get and what the first guy got that he didn't. But he understood the expectations that was placed on him as well, and he worked his talents. He worked his talent to bring back all he did according to his ability. He focused on himself. He ran his own race. How much is God getting out of you? How much are you blessing him with? Are you working your talents, using your money to please God, or using it to please yourself, or are you even working it at all? Meaning your money ain't working for you, your money ain't working for God, your money just coming in and going right back out. It's just coming in and going out. You're taking it from one corporation and giving it to another. You got paid from AT&T and you turned around and gave it to Chick-fil-A. Is the money doing anything? You're just a conduit. It's your funnel. It's going right through you to somebody else. God expects us to put our time, our talent, our treasures to work for his glory. Whatever you do, it says for you to work it with all your heart, work as if you're working for the Lord. It is the Lord Christ that you are serving. I remember I hated working at the post office. It was the worst job I ever had in my life. And I remember one day I walked in there and I said, if one thing goes wrong, just one thing, one person, one thing that I don't like go wrong, I'm going to quit today. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it for me. And I had a friend that was, he was a believer. And he asked me, he was like, how are you doing? And I was like, man, I'm not doing good today. This is not my day. And he said, man, I get that. I have days like that too. He's like, but you know what I do? And I really didn't care. I was like, sure, what you do? And he said, I give those days to God. Meaning, I work that entire day as a dedication to God. I'm going to act like everything that I do at work today is literally for God. Like he gave me the assignment and I'm working it for him. And dude, and let me tell you, that got me through so many bad days while I was working there, because I looked at it and I started working as if I was serving God. You're doing right. If you're doing right, you doing right by your money and being financially set brings glory to God. It actually brings glory to him. And you've got talent and God is expecting you to work it. So when the master kind of returns and he receives the report from the first servant, he said he is so pleased with them, right? So he gives them this big praise report. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, and I will put you in charge of a whole bunch of other things. Come and join in with your master's happiness, right? He was so excited, as you would be too. I gave you $6 million. You gave me 12. Yeah. I'm pretty sure most of us will be happy with said servant, right? But this is the part that I really like. When the second servant came, the master was equally pleased. He was just as happy about what the second servant had done as he did with the first one. He was equally happy with his report. Although the return wasn't the same, his joy about it was exactly the same from servant one to servant two. This lets us know that God actually enjoys your talent. God enjoys your talent. He enjoys what he's given to you. But be clear about what it is that God actually enjoys. He's not concerned on the ROI, the return on investment. That's not really what he's concerned about. That's why the master was equally pleased with both reports, because it wasn't about how much they brought back. That's not what this story is even about, the return on investment. God is deeply concerned about our hearts towards him. He is overjoyed when we can work with all of our hearts for him, not grudgingly, not because we have to, not because we're afraid of some kind of discipline that's going to happen, but it's coming from a place of overflow of gratitude and love. God enjoys what we give him from our time, our talents, and our treasures as a worship unto him. I want you to be financially set because God wants me to be financially set. And by achieving this thing, it brings glory to him, which he enjoys. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The first two servants wanted to please the master, and they worked like they did. They could have shortcutted. They could have stole a little bit. They could have made some money and pocketed a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Who would know? Who would know? As long as I gave you back what you gave me with a little extra on top, you don't know how much money I done put in my own pocket, right? You don't know how much of it. And that's what we do sometimes. It's like, how much of what am I doing is going to be for me, Lord? How much of what you're asking me to do is going to be for me? What am I going to get out of this? If I pray, what do I get? If I fast, what do I get? If I do this other stuff, what do I get? Right? It's always about the return, the manipulation of what do I get out of this. But the first two servants, all they wanted to do was really please their master, and they worked like it. They gave everything they could. But the third servant was rebuked. And again, it had very little to do with his ROI. It didn't have, most people read that and think that's the problem. It's not. He did nothing with his talent. He did nothing with his opportunity. He had the ability, which is why the man entrusted him to begin with, empowered him to begin with, and he did nothing according to his ability. He did absolutely nothing. He was lazy. He just buried it. He did nothing with what the talent that God gave him. $1.2 million, and he did nothing. Take honest inventory of yourself right now and all that God has entrusted you in your life, your time, your gifts, your ability, your health, your job, your family, your education, your opportunities, your experience. Take a full inventory of all the talents that God has bestowed upon you in your life. And God wants to know, why would you bury all that talent? Why would you bury it? Everything that I have entrusted you with, empowered you with, emboldened you with, and you took it and buried it. Did nothing with it. All those hours that you have actually worked on your job. I know many of you ain't been working years and years and years, but you've been working some hours. You can look on your timestamp and see how many hours you've been working. So think about it. All that time and all those hours that you have put in for all this time, all those hours that you work, and you don't have anything to show for it. You just buried. You buried all that time. No assets, no savings, no investments, no plans for growth, no next step, nothing. God shows up for us every single day, daily. He shows us every day that we have talent, every single day. why do we choose to bury it? Why is that something that we actually practice? It speaks to relationship or lack thereof. Notice the third servant is the only one that brings up the master's personality when he talks about him. He calls him harsh. He calls him demanding. The servant number 3 has this weird, skewed view and distorted view of the master, and it causes him to believe that all the master really cared about was the results. That's all he thought that the master cared about was the results. His actions and ultimately his punishment is given, not because he did not perform or do something like it was because he was disconnected and distant from the master. That's why he got rebuked. Because his skew, the way he looked at him was wrong. Understand how you view God is going to shape your choices. If you look at God and you believe that God, if you don't believe that God cares about you and that he really just wants you to work, and he really just wants you to do what he wants you to do, and he really just wants you to do all this stuff. If you're looking at God as this big overseer that's going to punish you if you don't do what you want to do, it's going to change how you act. It's the choices you make. What you're willing to do. How much effort are you going to give? If you're going to skim off of the top in effort, in time, not necessarily money. I don't think many of you steal, but maybe so. Are you going to steal off of the top of what you owe God or what you give him? Are you going to skim off of the top? And when it comes to prayer, I did 5 minutes and no more when you were supposed to give more. Is how you view him. That's what the guy got rebuked for. If you don't believe that God cares about you, you won't care about him. You won't care about his kingdom. You won't care about doing what you have to do with what he gives you. Ultimately, you will end up with you will miss the main message of the story. And the main message of the story, I truly feel and believe, is this. God is extending an invitation to work with him. If you look at the whole thing about the talents and everything that the master did, if you really kind of look at it from a relational standpoint, all it was an invitation for them to work with the master even more closely. I'm giving you an opportunity to come in and work even more closely with me, with what I'm doing, what I have going on, right? That's what this was all about. The point of the talents wasn't about making more money. It was the master's way of extending an invitation to the servants for a deeper relationship. The whole story is about God wanting deeper relationship with us. He chose you out of 100 million different other candidates because he wanted relationship with you. He had 100 million others that he could have had relationship, but he wanted a relationship with just you. He entrusted you with the talents he gave you because he wanted relationship with you. He empowered you with with the talents that he gave you because he wants relationship with you. He expects that you and him are going to be able to do great things together. That's why he talks about the plans that I have for you. And he's already made plans because he has expectation of the relationship that the two of you are going to be able to do together. He already said the plans I have are good and they're going to prosper you. He's made plans for you ahead of time because he expects for the two of you to come into relationship and works together. He enjoys what you produce together because he likes being around you and in relationship with you. This life isn't a talent show. It's not about God sitting here judging our performance on the earth. It's not about him, you proving yourself to him. It's not about perfectionism and getting everything right every single time. It's about relationship. It's all about relationship. We were in Bible study and we were talking about the law and we were saying about like good people. And I was saying why this is why good people won't make it into heaven. And we gave this example of it's midnight and you're at home and somebody knocks on your door and you open the door and it's Charlene. And you don't know Charlene. But Charlene says, listen, I need to come in your house. And you say, I don't know you. Absolutely not. And Charlene says, but I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I work for Habitat for Humanity. I give blood to the United Blood Place. I helped the Hurricane Katrina victims. I'm a good person. I take in rescue dogs. Can I come in? No. But I'm a good person. I don't know you. I don't know you. And that's what God is saying about all of this was he wants to know you. Even being financially set is something he wants to do with you. It's a working relationship. I want you to be financially set because it's going to make us something that we can do together to bring us closer together in relationship. It's not about him looking and judging and all this other stuff. He wants to do this stuff with you, not you doing it by yourself. He gave you talent. He gave you a job. He gave you money. He gave you time. He gave you experiences. He gave you skills, abilities. He gave you a life for you to work with him and have relationship. The moment you were born, it was an invitation for you to have relationship with him. He's extending this invitation to you for you to give your life to a God who gave his all for you just to forge a relationship. He took the step forward a long time ago, gave everything he had to make this thing happen. Those desiring financial freedom, he is extending an invitation to you right now to work with him. He's saying, come and share in my happiness. Come share in my happiness. You want to be financially free? I want that for you too. Understand, if you are financially set, God is happy about it and you're happy about it. And if you ain't financially set, you're not happy about it, and neither is he. Y'all both are not happy about it. But he wants to walk this thing together with you in relationship. Understand the whole purpose of God giving you talent was so you can use it to come closer to him and have a relationship together. That's why he's giving you the talent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, on tonight, there's a couple people I do want to pray for specifically. Tasia, I want to pray for you, and I want to pray for you, Renard. And we're going to do actually probably two different ones. And the reason being, y'all go? Yeah. Say we want. The reason why he's calling the two of you is because you guys have an entrepreneurial call on your life.